Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
Imagine paying $400 a night for a completely basic budget hotel room and actually considering it a good deal.
All right. It sounds crazy, but today we are setting our coordinates for Akureyri. It's Iceland's northern capital, which is this surprisingly vibrant town of around 19,000 people.
Yeah, sitting right at the head of the really spectacular Fjord.
Exactly. And just to give you some geographic context right up front, if you are standing by the water there, you are just 60 miles below the Arctic Circle. So, that is serious northern territory.
It really is.
And for this deep dive, our mission is to answer a very specific, incredibly timely question for your travel planning. We are looking strictly at 2026. Right now, Iceland is in the absolute thick of this massive cruise tax backlash.
Which is changing everything.
Changing everything. So the question is Akureyri the smarter, cheaper, less crowded alternative to the usual Reykjavik trip? Or does the famous and frankly terrifying Icelandic price shock still ruin the budget no matter how far north you go?
It's basically the ultimate travel math problem, isn't it? You're balancing that desire for natural isolation against, well, hard macroeconomic realities.
Absolutely.
And to solve this equation for you today, we have to be incredibly methodical.
Extremely methodical. In fact, we're going to walk you through exactly 11 segments in order today. We'll cover the month-by-month pricing swings, which go from like $120 to an agonizing $396.
Agonizing is the right word.
Oh, it hurts. We're also naming the exact hotels you should book, the specific supermarkets where you absolutely must buy your groceries if you want to survive, the actual costs of activities, and the logistical traps that ensnare almost every first-timer.
Yeah, the traps are brutal.
They really are. And then finally, we'll give you 5 definitive, no-nonsense verdicts tailored for every single budget tier.
And I think it's vital we emphasize right now why we're doing this deep dive specifically for 2026.
Yeah, set the stage for that.
The economic landscape of Icelandic tourism is just, it's shifting under our feet right now. If you're planning a trip today using advice from 2023 or 2024, you're basically operating on obsolete intelligence.
Right. The game has changed.
Exactly. The government has aggressively adjusted the supply and demand levers through new taxation.
Yeah.
And understanding the fallout of these new policies is really the only way you're going to protect your wallet and, actually find that remote wilderness you're traveling to Iceland to experience in the first place.
So let's establish exactly where we are on the map and what is happening with this new legislation. When people refer to Akureyri as the gateway to the north, that is not a marketing slogan. It is a geographical reality.
Yeah, you literally have to go through it.
Right. Think of Akureyri as this heavily fortified base camp. You retreat behind its municipal borders to eat, to sleep, to resupply. But during the day, you're venturing out into these massive, radiating spokes of wilderness.
It's like the hub of a wheel.
That's a perfect analogy, yeah. The hub of a wheel. You have Lake Mývatn with its steaming volcanic vents. You've got the sprawling Diamond Circle driving route, the incredible Godafoss waterfall just down the road.
Which is stunning, by the way.
Oh, unbelievable. Plus, world-class whale watching up in Husavik and the wildly dramatic Tröllaskagi Peninsula. If you want to access the north, you are funneling through this specific town.
You don't really have a choice.
No, you don't. But the headline hanging over all of this for 2026 is the cruise tax. So can you break down exactly what the government did here?
Sure. It's a really fascinating case study in how a single governmental lever can reshape an entire regional economy overnight.
Right.
So in 2025, the Icelandic government introduced a direct head tax on cruise ship arrivals. And the math works out to roughly 14 British pounds, or about $18 per passenger, for every single day a ship is in Icelandic waters.
Okay, so $18 a day per person.
Exactly. And we have to look at this neutrally, right? Purely as an economic supply and demand mechanism.
Right. We're not taking sides on whether the tax is good or bad, just looking at the facts.
Precisely. The government saw an infrastructure strain from massive foot traffic that simply wasn't translating into local spending, so they applied a financial friction point.
Makes sense. So what was the fallout?
Well, the immediate impact. Cruise Iceland projects that the gross tonnage of cruise ships arriving will drop by 12% in 2026, and then a staggering 23% by 2027.
Wait, hold on. Explain gross tonnage in this context.
Right.
Why aren't they just measuring it by the number of individual ships?
That is a crucial distinction. Gross tonnage essentially measures the internal volume of the vessel, so it dictates the scale.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. A 12% drop in gross tonnage doesn't necessarily mean 12% fewer ships, right? It means the mega ships, the floating cities carrying 4,000 or 5,000 passengers, those are the ones altering their itineraries, because that daily head tax makes stopping in Iceland financially unviable for their profit margins.
Oh, okay.
You might still see the smaller, high-end expedition ships, but the massive bulk carriers of tourism are definitely pulling back.
So you have a town that historically relied on the port of Akureyri to absorb these massive daily waves of non-Reykjavik arrivals. I mean, thousands of people stepping off a gangway, buying coffees, booking bus tours, and that volume is vanishing.
It's a huge step change for the local economy.
It is. And the logical assumption is that a town facing a massive drop in guaranteed foot traffic would, slash prices to incentivize independent travelers to fill that void. But is that happening? Let's look at the baseline economics right now. Across the 249 hotel and guest house properties in the area, the average rate currently sits at $202 a night.
Right, but as we know, an average in Iceland is a deeply deceptive metric.
Oh, completely deceptive. Because in March, the absolute dead of the low season, that average is $120. But in August, the absolute peak, it skyrockets to $396.
It's just a punishing swing.
It really is. If we zoom out, the high season from June to August averages $320, while the low season from December to February sits at $154.
And then look at the activities, right? Getting on a boat for whale watching runs $80 to $150 per person.
Yeah.
A guided Northern Lights tour, that'll set you back $88 to $154.
I really have to push back on this hotel pricing model, though, a threefold seasonal swing. When someone pays $396 in August, they aren't actually getting luxury, right? They're literally paying a premium tier price for a room that is, by all definitions, just a basic utilitarian budget room.
Essentially, yes. You're paying for the calendar page, not the thread count on the sheets.
Wow.
The physical room does not change at all. The square footage, the bathroom fixtures, the breakfast buffet, they remain identical to the $120 experience you'd get in March.
That's wild.
But the demand for that specific square footage in the month of August is just so extraordinarily intense that the market dictates a near $400 price tag. It is dynamic pricing at its most ruthless and unapologetic.
Yeah, you're competing with an immense bottleneck of, European and North American travelers who are bound by summer school holidays and corporate vacation schedules.
And just the basic biological desire to experience Iceland without freezing to death.
Exactly. Which brings us to segment 2. Because if the price of your bed changes that drastically just based on the month, then understanding exactly when to go is arguably more important than deciding where to go.
The calendar basically dictates your entire financial reality.
It really does. And the truth is, Akureyri operates as 2 completely different cities depending on the month you arrive.
It's a profound duality.
Yeah. You have the summer version, you're dealing with endless daylight, the midnight sun never really setting, puffins nesting on the coastal cliffs, boats heading out constantly onto the fjord for whale watching. It feels very energized.
Very vibrant, yeah.
But then you have the winter version. The sky is dominated by the auroras. Locals are skiing at the Hlíðarfjall mountain resort right above town. But you are severely restricted by the light. I mean, you only have about 3 hours of functional daylight from November to February.
Right. And navigating this extreme duality requires what we can basically call a cost curve masterclass.
Ooh, I like that. Cost curve masterclass.
Timing alone can literally triple the cost of your trip without adding a single ounce of extra luxury. So if you're looking for the absolute best value windows for 2026, you want to target the shoulder seasons with, surgical precision.
Okay, lay it out for us.
The first golden window is late April to late May. The weather is stabilizing, the mountain roads are finally starting to clear of the heavy winter snowpack, the puffins are returning to the cliffs.
Always a bonus.
Exactly. And yet, the hotel algorithms haven't quite caught up yet. The rates are still hovering near that $154 shoulder average.
Okay, so that's spring. What's the second golden window?
Late September. It's arguably the most strategic time to visit. The immense summer crowds have completely collapsed, they've gone back to school or work, but more importantly, you finally have dark nights again, which means the auroras have restarted.
That's a huge point. You get the lights without the winter freeze. But what about the worst time?
The worst possible value, without question, is the first 3 weeks of August. The hotels hit that agonizing $396 peak. Rental cars are scarce, and they command just exorbitant daily rates.
Then what about the cruise ships?
Crucially, despite the 12% decline from the new cruise tax we talked about, the peak megaship tonnage that is still coming. It arrives almost exclusively in August.
Wow, okay. Which brings us to a very specific tactical reality of visiting this town. If you are there in the summer, you have to actively manage those crowds.
You really have to utilize the cruise call strategy. As an independent traveler, you must treat the Port of Akureyri arrival schedule like it is a vital piece of daily intelligence.
Wait, can you just look that up?
Yes, the schedule is entirely public. You can look it up online. And if a large ship, or worse, two large ships, is scheduled to be in port, the town center and the major nearby natural sites are going to be completely overrun by mid-morning.
So what's the play?
Your strategy has to be proactive. If a ship is in, you do not linger over your hotel breakfast. You get out. You head far inland early, well before the massive fleet of tour coaches starts rolling out of the port at, like, 9:00 a.m.
It's fascinating. It's really like checking the weather forecast, but for human traffic.
That's exactly what it is.
You wake up, you don't just look at the sky to see if it's raining. You look at your phone to see if a 4,000-passenger floating hotel just dropped anchor. Because that single piece of data basically dictates whether you're going to have this serene spiritual moment standing at the edge of a roaring waterfall, or if you're going to be trapped behind a wall of 50 idling diesel buses and hundreds of people with iPads completely blocking your view.
It dictates the entire emotional reality of your day.
Absolutely.
And speaking of weather, any discussion about timing your trip requires a pretty blunt driving reality check.
Oh, for sure.
Summer, driving around the north is generally straightforward. A standard two-wheel drive rental car is perfectly fine for Route 1 and the main access roads. But if you're chasing that winter window, say, you decide to drive out to Lake Myvatn in January, you absolutely require a 4x4 vehicle. And, more importantly, you need genuine, tested winter driving experience.
Let me underline that for everyone listening. Ice, unpredictable whiteout blizzards, gravel roads completely hidden under packed snow. Northern Iceland in January is not the environment to learn how to handle a vehicle on a skid.
No, it is hostile terrain.
It really is. But assuming you've picked your perfect season, you've understood the cost curve, and you're ready for the elements, we move to segment 3. You actually have to get your physical body to this northern outpost. First impressions and logistics.
Let's examine the arrival logistics. You essentially have 3 primary entry points. The domestic route is historically the most efficient. You take an Icelandair flight from the Reykjavik domestic airport.
And we must clarify for the listener, that is the small domestic airport located right in downtown Reykjavik, right? Not the massive international hub at Keflavik where your flight from the US or Europe likely landed.
That's right. You have to transfer between airports if you do that. But the domestic flight is about 45 minutes. And Akureyri Airport is incredibly convenient. It's situated just 2 miles from the absolute center of town.
Okay, so that's flying. What if you don't want to fly domestic?
Well, you can drive. If you pick up a rental car straight out of Keflavik International, you're looking at a 5 to 6 hour drive straight up Route 1, the famous ring road.
Okay, but here is the major shift for 2026. We are seeing a significant surge in international arrivals flying directly to the north.
Yes, this is a big change.
EasyJet and a handful of specialized winter charters are flying direct from London and other European hubs, completely bypassing Reykjavik entirely.
They're specifically targeting that peak Aurora season. They realize that travelers want to get straight to the northern isolation without paying that 6-hour transit penalty.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
And however you arrive, the initial sensory impact of the place is quite spectacular.
It's a masterclass in scale, really. You're deposited at the edge of this deep, impossibly blue, cold fjord. And rising almost vertically straight out of the water are these massive snow-streaked mountains.
It sounds like a painting.
It looks like one. And clinging to the west bank of the water is the town center, which is characterized by these charming, brightly painted, red-roofed timber houses. It's a place that feels simultaneously isolated at the edge of the world, yet incredibly civilized.
And the town layout really reflects that civilization. It's supremely manageable. The main commercial vein is a street called Hafnarstræti, and you can walk it end to end in about 15 minutes.
It's very compact.
Very. It holds the vast majority of your hotels, your cafes, your restaurants, and towering over all of it is the Akureyri Iceland, this massive, striking, brutalist-style church that sits on a hill watching over the harbor.
It's a great landmark.
Oh, and before we move off the streets, we have to talk about the traffic lights.
Ah, yes. The heart-shaped red lights.
Yes. It is the strangest, most delightful quirk. You're standing at a crosswalk in the freezing cold, the traffic light turns red, and instead of a solid red circle, it is a glowing red heart.
And if we look at the history behind that, it actually illuminates the resilience and character of the town.
I love this story.
Yeah, this wasn't some quirky tourism marketing campaign.
Yeah.
This initiative was birthed during the brutal 2008 financial crisis. As you'll recall, the Icelandic banking sector essentially imploded.
Right. It was a total meltdown.
The national economy collapsed, life savings were wiped out overnight, and morale across the country was incredibly dark. So the town council in Akureyri decided to physically change the red traffic lights to hearts as a psychological buoy.
Wait, so it was like a morale thing?
Exactly. It was a municipal reminder to stay positive, to quite literally have heart during an economic winter. It was a tiny gesture, but it endured. And now it creates this wonderful, unexpected photographic moment for visitors.
That context makes it so much better. It wasn't for us tourists, it was for them. It's a little bit of warmth when you're 60 miles from the Arctic.
Exact.
Practically speaking, when you arrive at the airport, getting into town is simple. A taxi from the terminal to Hafnarstræti will cost you around 2,500 Icelandic krona, which is roughly $18.
But here's the warning that catches so many people off guard.
Oh, this is a big one.
There is no Uber, there is no Lyft.
Right.
Ride-sharing does not exist anywhere in the entire country of Iceland.
Listen to this, folks. Do not stand at the curb pulling up your app, trying to refresh the screen. You will freeze to death waiting for a car that legally cannot exist.
It is a strictly regulated, unionized taxi market designed to protect local wages. But, considering the geographic scale of the town, you rarely need a vehicle once you're actually situated in the center.
Which honestly leads me to a geographical concern, bringing us to segment 4, accommodation. If I can walk the main commercial street of the town in 15 minutes, and I don't have Uber to casually bounce between distant neighborhoods, does it feel too small? I mean, if I'm planning a week-long trip, am I going to get claustrophobic in a town that compact?
It's a highly valid concern if you approach Akureyri as an urban destination, but it's not.
Right.
Akureyri is a base camp. You aren't going to spend 5 days purely exploring its urban nuances or cafe hopping. The immense value of the town is solely in its proximity to the vast wilderness surrounding it.
So you're just there to recharge.
Exactly. You sleep there, you eat there, you resupply there, but your daylight hours are spent out in the elements, which makes the decision of where you drop your bags, where you actually sleep, incredibly important to the success of the trip.
Definitely. If you can't rely on ride shares to get you out of town and the center is that small, the bed you choose dictates your comfort level. So let's break down the realities of what your money actually buys in 2026. We're going to look at 4 specific traveler archetypes. Let's start at the bottom of the budget tier: backpackers and solo travelers.
Okay, for this demographic, your primary targets are going to be Akureyri backpackers or the Hafnarstræti hostel. Both are strategically located right on that main drag, putting you exactly in the center of the limited action.
And the cost.
You're looking at shared dorm beds starting around $76 a night.
I need everyone to absorb that number. $76 for a bunk bed in a room with strangers. Welcome to the Icelandic price floor.
It's steep for a hostel, yeah.
Very. But to be fair to Akureyri backpackers, it is renowned for being incredibly well equipped for the price. They offer fast free Wi-Fi, communal kitchens, and they even have sauna and spa access included, which is, the exact physical remedy you need after spending 8 hours freezing on the deck of a whale-watching boat.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, what if I refuse to sleep in a dorm? What does the mid-range couple archetype look like?
If you require privacy and a private bathroom, you should target the Centrum Hotel. Again, it's located right on Hafnarstræti, about a 4-minute walk from the church and mere steps from the Hof Cultural Center.
So great location, what's the damage?
If you book during the shoulder season we discussed, you're looking at roughly $180 to $230 a night. It delivers privacy, a supremely walkable location, and a very clean Scandinavian standard of comfort, all without crossing into the extreme luxury pricing bracket.
Okay, so survival mode works for the solo traveler willing to eat supermarket bread, and the mid-range couple can split a $200 room. But I can't subject a family of 4 to a tiny room or a hostel dorm.
No, you can't.
What happens to the math when you introduce the family archetype? They actually need space, heat, and perhaps a hot meal.
This is where strategic booking becomes critical. Families should immediately look at the Berjaya Iceland Hotels properties. They offer apartment-style rooms that start around $196 a night.
Wait, hold on. An apartment-style room for a family is cheaper than the standard mid-range room for a couple.
Well, the nightly rate at the Berjaya is appealing, yes, but the real hidden value is the infrastructure of the room itself. The apartment-style units feature kitchen access.
Ah, the kitchen.
Having a functional kitchen in your unit is going to be the single most powerful financial tool of your entire Icelandic trip. When we break down the restaurant economics in Segment 5, you'll understand exactly why the ability to boil your own pasta is a financial lifesaver.
Totally understood. Finally, let's look at the luxury traveler. If budget is genuinely not an issue, where are they staying?
If you have the capital, you are booking Hotel Akureyri, or one of the newer, hyper-curated boutique properties springing up near the Botanical Garden.
Nice. And the price.
But watch the dynamic pricing here. In April, you might secure a beautiful luxury room for $212. But if you want that exact same room with the exact same pillows in the first week of August, the algorithm will push that rate well past $400 a night.
Ouch. And regardless of whether you're in the $76 bunk or the $400 suite, how far in advance do we actually need to lock these rooms down?
The booking timeline in northern Iceland is entirely unforgiving due to the limited inventory. If you're aiming for those golden shoulder seasons, March, April, or September, you need to secure your room 4 to 6 weeks in advance.
Okay, that's not terrible.
No, but if you're braving the peak season of July or August, you absolutely must book 12+ weeks out.
3 months.
Minimum. And mark this specific logistical trap down. The absolute first dates to sell out across the entire town are the Saturday to Saturday turnover days in July.
Why specifically then?
This is when the major cruise ships frequently call, and the independent traveler turnover schedules overlap with the maritime schedules. It creates a massive town-wide choke point for room availability.
So plan 3 months ahead, or resign yourself to sleeping in your rental car, which sounds awful. And as you mentioned with the family archetype, having a kitchen is brilliant, which leads us directly into Segment 5, the daily battleground of Icelandic travel, the survival economics of food, groceries, and etiquette.
Survival is really the most accurate term here. The culinary scene in Iceland is superb, the chefs are world-class, but the restaurants will systematically and aggressively dismantle your travel budget if you aren't prepared.
So true.
The real heroes of any successful, budget-conscious Icelandic itinerary are the supermarkets.
Yes, if you want to survive, you need to familiarize yourself with a very specific, slightly deranged-looking, cross-eyed pink pig.
It's iconic.
It is. That is the logo for Bónus, which is the cheapest, most ubiquitous supermarket chain in Iceland. Your other main option is a chain called Krónan. Both have large, accessible branches in Akureyri's main shopping areas.
Let's look at the actual shelf prices, just to give you an idea.
Kimmy.
A standard loaf of sandwich bread is going to run you about $4. A liter of standard milk is $2.50. A pot of Icelandic skyr, which is this incredible, thick, protein-dense yogurt that you will inevitably end up eating constantly, is about $1.50 to $2.
And a basic frozen pizza is like $7.
Right. Now look at the underlying mechanisms driving those specific prices. What you're seeing on those grocery shelves is the harsh geographic reality of an isolated island nation situated near the Arctic Circle.
Makes sense.
Anything that requires importation, like the wheat for that $4 loaf of bread or the frozen pizza, is punishingly expensive due to the massive freight costs, fuel surcharges, and import tariffs. The island simply cannot grow wheat at scale.
But the local staples are cheaper.
Exactly. The local staples, the dairy for the milk, the cultured skyr, the local fish, are actually quite reasonably priced because they're produced locally.
Yeah.
You have to adapt your diet to what the island natively produces, or you pay the import penalty.
And speaking of what the island natively produces, here is the absolute golden rule of Iceland. Tap water is the best in the world, and it is completely free.
Yes, never forget this.
It's filtered naturally through porous volcanic rock and comes straight from the glaciers. Never, ever buy bottled water in an Icelandic supermarket or convenience store. It is a pure tourist trap. Locals will quietly, but very harshly, judge you for paying for plastic bottles of something that flows freely from every tap in the country.
It's an environmental and financial absurdity to buy bottled water there.
Oh.
Now, if you step out of the supermarket and look at the alternative, we face the restaurant budget killers.
Brace yourselves.
If you sit down at a standard, unassuming mid-range restaurant in the center of town, a basic main course is going to average $30 to $50.
Ouch.
And a single draft beer will cost you $11 to $14.
A $14 beer. You really have to, nurse that point for an hour. And if you decide to celebrate and do fine dining, perhaps you book a table at Strikie or Rub 23 to try their renowned tasting menus. You are looking at $80 to $120 per person, at a minimum, before alcohol.
Which is exactly why we need to highlight the value meals. You don't have to boil pasta in your Berjaya apartment every single night.
Thank goodness.
Look for local dishes designed for sustenance. Look for plokkfiskar, which is a traditional, incredibly hearty Icelandic fish and potato stew. Or find a casual spot serving kjötsúpa, the traditional lamb soup.
Oh, the lamb soup is amazing.
It is undeniably the best hot meal value in town, usually running $18 to $22. It comes with bread, it's deeply warming after a cold day, and it will keep you full for hours.
And do not sleep on the bakery hot dog. The Icelandic hot dog is a cultural institution. It's made primarily with local lamb topped with raw onions, crispy fried onions, sweet mustard, and remoulade.
They are surprisingly good.
Incredible. And you can get one at a local bakery or gas station for under $5. It's the ultimate budget hack. Now, while we are out navigating the restaurants and bakeries, let's cover the cultural etiquette, because North American travelers often misinterpret the locals.
The cultural landscape is distinct and requires adaptation. First, understand that Icelanders communicate very directly. They do not wrap their sentences in unnecessary performative pleasantries.
Right.
If you ask a question, you will get a blunt, factual answer. This is not unfriendliness, it is linguistic efficiency. Do not be offended.
Okay, good to know.
Secondly, and critically for your budget, there is zero tipping in Iceland. None. The service charge and VAT are already legally built into the menu prices, and the hospitality staff are paid a robust, negotiated living wage. Leaving a tip is completely unnecessary and occasionally confusing for the staff.
Okay, we can definitely adjust to directness and no tipping. But we have to address the pool rule. This is the cultural mandate that shocks tourists the most.
The public pool hygiene protocol. It is non-negotiable.
If you go to the local municipal geothermal swimming pool, which you absolutely must do, by the way, it's the center of Icelandic social life, you are required to shower completely naked with soap, thoroughly scrubbing specific areas of your body before you are allowed to put your swimsuit on and walk out to the pool area.
It's heavily enforced.
Oh, yeah. There are literally large graphic diagrams in the locker rooms showing you exactly which parts of your body to focus the soap on.
We really have to explain the mechanism behind this because it's a matter of pure public health and chemistry. These pools are geothermally heated. The water comes from the earth.
Right.
Because of this natural source and the desire to keep the water pure, Icelandic public pools use significantly less chemical chlorine than pools in the US or the UK. Therefore, the bacterial load on the physical human bodies entering the water must be absolutely minimized before they enter.
That actually makes total sense.
The locals take this incredibly seriously. There will be a locker room attendant, and they will ensure compliance.
I always compare the naked shower rule to airport security. You don't stand at the TSA checkpoint arguing with the agent about taking your shoes off or taking your laptop out of the bag.
No, you don't.
You don't argue the logic, you just do it to get to the gate. You do not argue with the Icelandic pool attendant, you just strip, scrub, and get on with your day. It's actually quite liberating once you get over the initial shock.
A very precise analogy. Now, if we take these rigid cultural norms, the heavy import costs of food, and mix them with the drastic seasonal variations in accommodation, we start to see wildly different daily bottom lines for our travelers. Let's run the actual math for segment 6. Daily budget.
Let's do it. Let's build a day-in-the-life microeconomic breakdown for each of our 4 archetypes for 2026. Let's start with our low-end backpacker. They're spending $76 on that hostel bunk. They skip the cafes entirely and spend $12 on groceries at Bónus, making sandwiches for breakfast and lunch. For dinner, they find that hearty lamb soup for $20. Their activity for the day is walking the town and visiting the botanical garden, which is $0.
Nice.
And they treat themselves to exactly 1 beer at the hostel bar for $12. Their survival budget, around $120 a day.
That is the absolute financial floor. It requires strict, unwavering discipline. Every meal out breaks that budget.
Exactly.
Now consider the mid-range couple. Per person, they're splitting that $220 room at the Centrum, so the math starts at $110 each. They grab a modest cafe breakfast with coffee for $15. They split the cost of a standard rental car to drive out to Godafoss, which runs about $50 per person for the daily rate and fuel.
Okay.
A sit-down restaurant lunch is $25, and a mid-range dinner is $45. That brings the mid-range traveler to roughly $245 per person per day.
Okay, now let's apply the kitchen strategy to the family of four. They booked that Berjaya apartment for $320, which splits down to $80 per person. Because they have a kitchen, they make breakfast and pack lunches, dropping their daily grocery bill to about $25 a person.
That's a huge saving.
Right. They hit the local geothermal pool in the afternoon, which is $8 for the adults and completely free for the kids. They do one major excursion, a $100 whale watching ticket per person. And they manage a simple pizza dinner out for $30 total, about $243 per person per day.
Wow.
The kitchen essentially absorbed the cost of the whale watching trip.
Precisely. It is a master class in the allocation of resources. You trade the luxury of being served breakfast for the luxury of seeing a humpback whale. But let's swing to the opposite end of the spectrum, the luxury day.
What does that look like?
You have the Hotel Akureyri suite, peaking at $400 a couple, so $200 per person. They bypass the rental car and hire a private driver and guide for a bespoke, isolated tour of the Diamond Circle. That's roughly $450, split to $225 per person.
It's amazing.
Fine dining in the evening at Rub 23 is $120, and they visit the upmarket Forest Lagoon Spa for $65. Their daily total lands around $610 per person.
And finally, a demographic that is increasingly looking for new bases. The digital nomad. If you want to live here for a month, tap into that fast internet, and soak in the isolation, what does that look like?
The math is highly prohibitive. A one-bedroom, centrally located apartment will cost you between $2,400 and $3,200 a month. Because you're living there, groceries will easily hit $600.
Oof.
A dedicated desk at a local co-working space is roughly $200. Basic transport and incidentals will add another $300. Realistically, you're looking at a monthly burn rate of $3,500 to $4,500 just to exist comfortably.
So what does this actually mean for the remote worker dreaming of an Arctic base?
It means that Akureyri is definitively one of Europe's most expensive monthly bases. The infrastructure is incredible, the geothermal heating is flawless, the internet is lightning fast. But the raw cost of sustaining a normal, comfortable life for 30 consecutive days is staggering compared to established remote hubs in Southern or Eastern Europe.
All right, so now that you, the listener, have the exact math, we need to pivot to segment 7. Because it is one thing to budget $245 a day, it is another thing entirely to have that money incinerated because you fell into a logistical nightmare.
Oh, absolutely.
Logistics traps in Iceland don't just cost you an hour, they can cost you thousands of dollars and ruin the trip. We have 3 named logistics traps you must aggressively avoid. Let's start with trap 1. The Godafoss bottleneck.
We touched on the port schedule earlier, but the physical mechanics of this trap are crucial to understand. Even factoring in the projected 12% drop in cruise tonnage for 2026, you still have massive megaships arriving in August.
Right, the big ones.
A single ship can seamlessly dump upwards of 3,000 passengers into the port at 8 a.m. And the shore excursion operators operate on mass efficiency. They instantly funnel these thousands of people onto the exact same 3 morning tour routes: Godafoss Waterfall, Lake Mývatn, and Husavik for whales.
And the physical space at a natural wonder like Godafoss simply cannot handle that sudden, violent influx of humanity. There are specific, narrow viewing platforms. Suddenly you have a queue of 50 massive diesel coaches idling in the gravel parking lot.
It completely changes the experience.
You have hundreds of people standing shoulder to shoulder on the paths, completely destroying the majesty and the soundscape of the waterfall. You've flown across the ocean, paid all this money to commune with wild nature, and you are staring at the back of someone's bright yellow rain jacket.
The fix requires absolute discipline. You must check the Port of Akureyri call list the night before. If a megaship is scheduled to dock, you must be in your rental car, navigating the ring road, and physically arriving at Godafoss by 7 a.m., long before the first coaches depart the port.
That's early, but worth it.
Or, alternatively, you completely flip your daily itinerary. Spend your morning safely inside the town, the botanical garden, and the local swimming pool, and visit the waterfall in the late afternoon, specifically after 4 p.m., when the cruise passengers are required to be back on board for a 5:00 p.m. sail away.
Such a smart hack. Now, trap number 2. The Reykjavik winter drive. I cannot tell you how many Icelandic vacations have been ruined by a blind trust in Google Maps.
It happens so often.
You land at Keflavik International in January, exhausted from the flight. You plug Akureyri into your phone, and Google cheerfully tells you it's a 5-hour and 30-minute drive up Route 1. Sounds like a beautiful, scenic little road trip to start the vacation, right?
It is a profound systemic deception by the routing algorithm.
Totally.
Between October and April, Route 1 forces you to cross the Exnadal mountain pass to reach Akureyri. This Pacific Pass is notorious across the country. It's subjected to high winds, sudden whiteout blizzards, and severe icing. It closes regularly, suddenly, and unpredictably.
Yep, it's a nightmare.
Your pleasant 5-hour drive hits a flashing yellow road closure sign, the barrier is down, and suddenly you're stranded in a remote gas station cafe. A one-day transit effortlessly turns into a 2-day, highly stressful logistics problem where you are paying for a hotel in Akureyri that you cannot reach.
And the fix here is straightforward. Do not gamble with your precious vacation time. Fly domestic from Reykjavik domestic to Akureyri. It costs $90 to $130 each way. The flight takes exactly 45 minutes.
So much easier.
You completely bypass the mountain passes and the weather chaos, or if you absolutely insist on driving in winter because you want the adventure, you must build a 24-hour buffer day into your itinerary, fully expecting the pass to close and delay you.
Which brings us to Trap 3, fuel and the ring road economics. Let's look at the raw commodity costs. Based on 2025 pricing, fuel in Iceland is sitting at roughly $9.44 a gallon.
$9.44.
Yeah. If you plan to drive the entire ring road loop, starting and ending in Akureyri, you're going to burn approximately $520 in fuel alone, just to make the circle.
That is half a month's rent in some cities, vaporized through the tailpipe of a rental car. And the vehicle costs get worse.
They do.
Most standard rental contracts in Iceland specifically exclude undercarriage damage and damage from gravel or volcanic ash. And guess what? When you're driving up north, you are constantly transitioning from perfectly paved asphalt to loose, ungraded gravel roads. A single sharp piece of volcanic rock kicked up by a passing transport truck that cracks your windshield or chips your paint can easily cost you thousands of dollars out of pocket when you return the keys.
The fix for this trap is twofold. First, you must swallow your pride at the rental counter and pay for the maximum zero-deductible extra insurance. Yes, it feels like a predatory upsell, but in Iceland, it's mandatory peace of mind. The environment is actively trying to dismantle the vehicle.
Very true.
Second, to manage the extreme fuel costs, employ a base and spoke strategy. Commit to staying within a 100-mile radius of Akureyri. Exhaust the diamond circle, explore the deep fjords, hike the local waterfalls, rather than burning $500 in gas trying to conquer the entire national circumference in a week.
Okay, so the logistics traps we just covered will cost you time, stress, and a lot of money. But we need to move to segment 8, which is about what could actually hurt you physically. We're talking safety, solo travel, and comfort. Iceland enjoys this global reputation as a pristine safe haven, but what does the actual data say?
The data absolutely confirms the reputation, but it requires specific context. Statistically, Iceland is consistently ranked as one of the safest countries on Earth. Akureyri, being a smaller provincial capital, is safer still. Petty crime, such as pickpocketing or bag snatching, is near zero. Violent crime directed against tourists is almost entirely unheard of. For solo female travelers, it is genuinely unremarkable to walk the streets at midnight, visit bars alone, or hike solo on the popular trails. The baseline social trust within the society is incredibly high.
But, and this is a massive distinction, the danger in Iceland isn't other people, it's the island itself. The actual risk hierarchy is fascinating because it defies typical travel fears. Number 1, by a huge margin, is single-vehicle road accidents.
Definitely.
You have tourists who have never driven on black ice or loose gravel. They get hypnotized by a volcano or a glacier out their passenger window. They drift slightly onto the soft volcanic shoulder, overcorrect the steering wheel, and instantly roll their rental car into a ditch.
Exactly. The landscape is a distraction hazard. Number 2 on the risk hierarchy is severe hypothermia resulting from underestimated weather. Travelers assume that a bright, sunny morning guarantees a warm afternoon.
Big mistake.
They hike out onto an exposed trail in a light cotton sweater. A squall blows in off the Arctic Ocean. The temperature drops 20 degrees in 10 minutes. The wind chill plummets, and because cotton retains moisture, they are suddenly in critical, life-threatening danger.
What's number 3?
Number 3 involves severe geothermal burns. This is tourists ignoring warning signs or wandering off trail around unmarked hot springs and stepping through a thin crust of earth into boiling mud. Finally, you have the very rare but very real avalanche risk in the deep Trolskagi backcountry during the winter ski season.
This is exactly why the golden rules exist. Rule 1. You must check road tests before you put the key in the ignition every single time. It provides real-time camera feeds of the mountain passes and color-coded wind warnings. Rule 2, check Vador.is for the hyper-local weather forecast, which changes hourly.
And Rule 3.
And Rule 3. And I have to stop you here because I genuinely do not understand how this is an ongoing statistical danger. Never step over a rope at a waterfall or a geyser. It's a rope. It physically means do not cross. How are tourists continually dying from this?
Because of the psychology of the modern traveler. They prioritize the digital photograph over the physics of the environment.
Oh, for Graham.
Yes. They see an angle that requires them to step just 1 foot beyond the designated safety line to get a clear, unobstructed shot for social media. What they fail to realize is that the grass or the rock just beyond that rope is permanently wet with microscopic spray from the waterfall, making it as slick as black ice.
Wow.
They take the step, their boot slips, and there is absolutely nothing to arrest their fall into the canyon. It is a fatal miscalculation of physical risk for digital reward.
It is tragic, and it is entirely preventable. Respect the ropes, guys. Now, switching gears from survival to comfort and medical care, if you are a solo traveler seeking community, Akureyri Backpackers is unmatched. The communal kitchen and the lively bar culture make it incredibly easy to find people to split a car rental with, which solves the fuel cost issue. For families, we already praised the municipal geothermal pool. It's about $8 for adults, free for kids. It has massive water slides, hot tubs of varying temperatures. It really functions as the social town square. But for the upscale traveler looking for genuine relaxation,
They should look to the Forest Lagoon. It's a relatively new addition to the northern spa circuit, priced at around $65 for entry. It is meticulously designed, seamlessly integrated into a rare birch forest just across the fjord from the main town.
sounds beautiful.
It offers a very serene, premium, architecturally stunning experience that is quite distinct from the energetic, family-focused vibe of the municipal pool.
And if something does go wrong on a hike, medical care is excellent. Akureyri Hospital is the major, highly equipped trauma center for the entire northern half of the country. But please hear this. Do not travel to Iceland without comprehensive travel insurance.
Yes, listen to this.
Why? Because if you fall off a hiking trail in a remote fjord and break your femur, a standard ambulance cannot reach you. You require a specialized helicopter evacuation. And the starting price for an Icelandic Coast Guard helicopter evac is around $25,000. Let your insurance company pay that catastrophic bill, not your retirement fund.
A sobering but entirely necessary warning. Now, having successfully navigated the treacherous roads, managed the extreme budget, and mitigated the very real elemental risks, we need to assess the emotional return on investment in Segment 9. This brings us to the highs and lows, best moments and honest disappointments.
Let's start with the highs, because when Akureyri and the surrounding north deliver, it is a life-changing travel experience. First, the absolute peak moment for many is the first sight of Godafoss. They call it the Waterfall of the Gods. It's a massive horseshoe-shaped cascade about 30 miles east of town.
It's mesmerizing.
The sheer volume of water is hypnotic, but the history elevates it. This is where the law speaker supposedly threw his pagan idols into the freezing, violent water when he decided Iceland would convert to Christianity in the year 1000. It is breathtaking.
Another defining peak experience is the whale watching out of Husavik, which is a very manageable drive from Akureyri.
Yeah.
They operate these beautifully restored traditional oak schooners.
Oh, I've seen pictures of those.
Between June and August, humpback whale sightings are practically guaranteed. Many of these oak boats have been converted to run silently on electric power. The profound silence as a massive humpback surfaces right beside the hull of an ancient wooden boat is an experience you cannot replicate elsewhere.
Oh, and a midnight soak at the Forest Lagoon in June. You are sitting in 100-degree geothermal water, surrounded by fragrant pine trees, and because of the midnight sun, the sky is perfectly bright at 10 a.m. It completely scrambles your circadian rhythm in a most wonderful, surreal way.
That sounds incredible.
Or flip the season entirely. Standing alone at Godafoss under a massive dancing green aurora in late September, and even just the initial arrival, the drive over the Vikerskara Pass where the mountains suddenly part and you see the vast deep blue fjord and the tiny red roofs of the town laid out below you for the very first time.
Those are the transcendent moments that really justify the expense and the logistics. But it's our job to ground this conversation with the honest disappointments. We have to meticulously manage expectations. First, the Myvatn nature baths.
Right.
They are heavily marketed as the Blue Lagoon of the North. They are genuinely good, and they are situated in a stunning, stark, volcanic landscape. However, they are not the Blue Lagoon.
Good to know.
The facilities are significantly older, the water isn't quite as vibrantly milky blue, and while it's roughly two-thirds the price of its southern cousin, you cannot go in expecting that ultra-premium, heavily curated luxury spa environment.
That is incredibly fair. Another letdown for some urban-focused travelers is the town size itself. We praised it for being walkable, but the reality is you can exhaust every street, cafe, and shop in the center of Akureyri in a single afternoon. If the weather turns terrible for 3 days straight, which happens often, and you can't safely go hiking or driving, you are going to run out of museums and distractions very quickly.
Nature also provides its own specific disappointments. If you visit Lake Myvatn in the absolute height of summer, no one ever warns you about the midges.
Oh, the midges.
The name Myvatn literally translates to midge lake. They do not bite, but they swarm in massive biological clouds so thick you can barely breathe or open your eyes without inhaling them. You absolutely must buy a head net at the local gas station, which, while highly effective, completely ruins the aesthetic of your vacation photos.
The ultimate atmospheric mood killer. And we have to circle back to the brutal math as a core disappointment. That $202 hotel average means that Akureyri is simply not a bargain destination. People hoping that moving away from the capital of Reykjavik would unlock some cheap, undiscovered, budget-friendly version of Iceland are going to be deeply shocked by their credit card statements.
And finally, those persistent cruise day crowds. Even with the new tax dropping the overall tonnage, pulling your rental car up to Godafoss and seeing a sea of red lanyards from a single megaship is deeply frustrating when you've traveled that far seeking isolation.
Which naturally leads us to segment 10, a critical pivot point: alternatives. If the listener has heard all of this, the $202 hotel average, the terrifying $9.44 a gallon fuel, the swarming midges, the cruise crowds at the waterfalls, and decided that the Icelandic equation simply does not balance for them anymore, what are the viable alternatives?
We have two specific named alternatives that offer similar geographical payoffs, but with entirely different economic structures.
Let's look at alternative number 1, Tromsø, Norway. Why does this work as a substitute for northern Iceland?
Tromsø is a brilliant pivot for several reasons. Geographically, it sits at a very similar latitude to Akureyri, meaning the Aurora viewing potential during the winter is virtually identical.
Okay, that's a plus.
The advantages. First, flight logistics. It's significantly cheaper and easier to fly directly into Tromsø from most mainland European hubs. Second, the daily food spend is surprisingly lower.
Wait, I have to push back hard on that. You're offering Norway as a budget alternative. Norway is historically one of the most notoriously expensive countries on planet Earth.
In a broader global context, yes, Norway is expensive, but in the hyper-specific comparison of an Arctic island versus the Arctic mainland, Tromsø wins.
Oh, because it's attached to the mainland.
Yes. Norway's supermarket and mid-range dining scene, while pricey, does not suffer from the extreme island import penalty that Iceland does. It's connected to the European mainland supply chain. Furthermore, Tromsø has a much larger, genuine Arctic city feel. It has a major university, a massive Arctic cathedral, and a truly bustling downtown that you cannot exhaust in an afternoon. Overall, our data model suggests a Tromsø trip will run you roughly 20 to 25% cheaper than an equivalent itinerary in Akureyri.
Okay, that makes sense when you factor in the supply chain. Now, what if the listener isn't looking for a bigger city like Tromsø? What if they want the Iceland of 15 years ago? The raw, untouristed, overwhelming isolation before the Instagram boom?
Then they must look at alternative number 2, Tórshavn in the Faroe Islands.
I am utterly obsessed with the Faroes. Visually, you are getting that exact same dramatic subarctic scenery. Craggy, impossible green mountains, deep dark fjords, waterfalls plunging directly off cliffs into the churning ocean. It matches northern Iceland blow for blow in terms of raw natural beauty.
But the critical defining difference is the visitor volume.
Exactly. There are practically zero crowds. You can hike out to a towering sea cliff and be the only human being for miles in any direction. There are direct flights now via Copenhagen or Edinburgh, so it is accessible.
It's a great option.
I always use this framing. Tromsø is the wallet-friendly urban cousin of Akureyri, but Tórshavn is a literal time machine back to the Iceland of 2010, before the megaships arrived and the algorithms took over the hotel pricing. You get the genuine, untouched, authentic fjord culture that northern Iceland quite frankly, lost a decade ago.
The necessary trade-off with the Faroe Islands, of course, is the lack of infrastructure. You do not have the vast volume of hotels, the organized luxury tour operators, or the extensive restaurant scene. It requires a much more independent, resilient traveler willing to manage their own logistics. But the payoff in pure isolation is immense.
All right. The immense amount of data is on the table. The logistical traps are exposed. The alternatives have been debated. It is time for segment 11, the Is It Worth It matrix.
The moment of truth.
We are going to rapidly but thoroughly deliver the definitive judgments for our 5 archetypes, based entirely on the math, the seasons, and the logistics we just deeply explored. Let's start with the backpacker. Is Akureyri in 2026 worth it for them?
Yes, with incredibly strict conditions. It's only worth it if you commit to the unyielding discipline we outlined. You must stay at Akureyri Backpackers to secure that $76 rate. You must eat Bónus supermarket food for every single breakfast and lunch. You limit yourself to one major splurge, like the Husavik whale watching.
And the timing.
Crucially, you must visit during the shoulder seasons, March to May or late September, when the hotel averages drop to that manageable $120 to $154 range. If you try to backpack Akureyri in August, it is a flat, definitive no. The $396 peak hotel average means the math simply does not work for a budget traveler.
What about the mid-range couple looking for comfort?
For the mid-range couple, the verdict is a solid car. Yes, if you target April to May or mid-September, book the Centrum hotel, share the cost of a rental car, and limit yourself to 2 paid guided tours, you can build a genuinely superb, comfortable week at around $245 per person per day.
That's pretty reasonable for Iceland.
At that specific price point, Akureyri is meaningfully better value than an equivalent base down in Reykjavik. Plus, you can actively leverage the 2026 cruise tax decline. With fewer total ship days, if you book your weeks deliberately, you get the majesty of the North without the suffocating crowds.
Moving to the family. Is it worth the investment for a family of 4?
Yes, with major conditions. The geographic assets, the cheap municipal geothermal pools, the easily accessible whale watching, the short driving loops off the ring road are outstanding for entertaining children.
But the budget.
However, the financial reality is stark. At $243 per person per day, combined with the incredibly high food bill, a 1-week trip for 4 is going to land around $6,800 before you even buy international flights. To make it viable, you must self-cater relentlessly. You must skip the August pricing peak, and you absolutely must rent an apartment like the Berjaya to secure that vital kitchen.
The luxury traveler. They are spending heavily, but are they getting their money's worth in experience?
A definitive yes. At $600+ per person per day, this demographic unlocks the absolute best of the region without compromise. You book the suite at Hotel Akureyri, you hire the private guide to navigate the tricky winter roads and avoid the remaining crowds, you dine exclusively at Rub 23, you soak at the Forest Lagoon.
Sounds like a dream.
You're getting a genuine top-tier Arctic experience with far less crowd pressure than the luxury circuit down south near the capital. Because of the slight dip in cruise traffic due to the tax, 2026 is arguably the best year in a decade to book this high-end, isolated experience.
Finally, the digital nomad. Is Akureyri a viable monthly base for remote work?
No. It is a terrible fit for a digital nomad. You are looking at unavoidable baseline costs of $3,500 to $4,500 a month. You're facing a winter where the light drops to 3 hours a day, which is psychologically brutal if you're trying to maintain a normal, productive work schedule.
Right. The lack of sun is tough.
The co-working infrastructure and community are thin compared to major European hubs. Akureyri is a spectacular 2-week trip. It is not a 3-month base. If you want to work remotely, take that exact same budget and go to Lisbon, go to Tallinn, or even Tromsø. They are vastly better equipped for the nomadic lifestyle.
So what does this all mean? We have given you the exhaustive numbers, the crowd-dodging strategies, and the final verdicts. But before we wrap up this deep dive, we need to look at the broader implications of these changes.
I want to leave you with a macro thought to mull over. We've spent this entire time discussing the 2026 cruise tax as a mechanism that is successfully pushing megaships out of vulnerable ports like Akureyri. It's working. The massive tonnage is dropping.
Yeah, that was the goal.
But think about the unintended secondary effect. As the suffocating crowds vanish, these spectacular isolated northern locations suddenly become significantly more desirable to wealthy independent travelers who previously avoided them specifically because of those crowds.
Oh, wow. I see where you're going with this.
Ironically, will this governmental policy designed to reduce strain actually drive the demand for boutique hotel rooms even higher, pushing that $396 August peak to $500 or more in the long run? By saving the count from the masses, they might ultimately price out everyone except the luxury class.
If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day. Host and expert speaker. That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.